I just want to give my take on this whole thing. And I have to be honest with you guys. This was kind of like a setup type show. The premise is sort of a setup because let's just be serious and let's think about this calmly and rationally and logically. It's not really as simple as I've laid it out. Because within all of those groups, you have those three groups. You also have subgroups and people who flip-flop from group to group. Because, you know, like me and Lolita once said, you know, like we got to stop calling them 5%ers and start calling them 2%, you know. You know,
that's right.
2%ers, because a lot of the 5%ers have decided that they was going to go and join the 10%. You know, so the breakdown might be a whole different, you know, demographic right now. But looking at it from the mind of an architect, look at the way that this system is set up here in America. And, you know, just as a reference, I'm not going to use them as an example because I don't want to use them as an example. I think that we can draw from our own well in terms of what we can do to structure ourselves in a way that we can obtain power. But if you look at the way that they have their system set up, you have left wing, you have right wing, and then you have moderates or independents, swing voters, people who can go left or they can go right depending upon how strong each side's argument is and how articulate they are and how they can communicate and touch with other groups. This is how they operate politically in this country. So what gets the mainstream or what gets the bulk of votes is somebody who can dance between those two lines. The reason why Barack Obama was elected is because he was a Democrat, but he wasn't too leftist in his way that he was approaching. He was more of a moderate in a sense, which made him able to attract independent voters and some right-wing voters, some conservative voters, because of his policy on certain issues. He had an across-the-board appeal, and this is the reason why he gained enough votes to eventually get into office. Now, you know, I'm going to exclude who he is and who he works for because that's not relevant to the topic at hand right now. But what I'm talking about is we have to have amongst the brothers and the sisters, because bottom line is the brothers and the sisters have to win this fight. Is that safe to say, Ambassador?
Oh, absolutely. Have to.
Because,
we have no choice.
Like you said, it's a done deal if we don't. And I'll give my analysis of why I feel we should win. First, let's deal with the Boule. The Boule is organized, but like Ambassador stated, and I'm glad you stated that because it kind of shortened where I was going to go and cut it even simpler. The Boule is organized because their master is organized. They mirror their masters. They're assimilationists. They don't really care about their history. They don't care about their culture. So therefore, they're ignorant. The only thing they're ignorant in is themselves compared to the niggas and the bitches. The niggas and the bitches are ignorant of themselves, but they also are ignorant of the white man's system as well in terms of how to maneuver in that too. The Boule has an advantage over the niggas and bitches because they can maneuver in the white man's system. They are more concerned about the white man's system and the white man's rules than they are about their own culture and their own history. Because as far as they're concerned, that's ancient history, ain't got nothing to do with what's going on right now. We want to be with the winning team. So ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, they're bitches. And if anybody saw Oz or Penitentiary, you know, Schillinger was always the dom. Beecher never really, you know, could get his manhood back. Even after he got revenge on Schillinger, he ended up being somebody else's bitch. So he was never able to be a man. You know, and Genie ultimately ended up getting his ass killed. You know, he never was able to get on top once you play that bitch role. A person who you at the bottom and you getting fucked all the time, that situation is just not going to turn itself around, and then all of a sudden you're going to be in power. That's not working.
Yes.
So in terms of who's going to win ultimately and who's going to empower themselves, it's not going to be the Boule. The niggas and the bitches have the heart and the desire to do it, but they don't have the knowledge, and they don't have the strategy. So their biggest strength is their heart. That's what I feel. Their biggest strength is their heart, and they have a tenacity toward their agenda, which is ignorance. Ignorance based on the obtaining material possessions, money, power, wealth. They have a narrative that's way stronger than the brothers and the sisters do in action. Not in rhetoric, but in action. They're more organized off their ignorance than we're organized off of our knowledge. And that's sad to say. It's a real sad statement to make, but it's the reality of the situation. Now, the brothers and the sisters. Our greatest strength is our knowledge of who we are and trying to arrange our existence around an African paradigm. Because ultimately, that, in the end game, is going to be what defeats the European and what defeats white supremacy. There's nothing more I can say other than that. That's our biggest strength, our knowledge of self, knowing the truth, knowing what the deal is, knowing who we are in relationship to who these Europeans are, and knowing what our lot is in relationship to the world and the universe. We know this, and that gives us the advantage over both the niggas and the bitches and the Boule. Because if the Boule really knew that, like people say, well, they know it, but they do otherwise. I really can't believe that they really even know it. They can't know it. How could you possibly know that and settle for being second fiddle?
Mm-hmm.
So, our biggest weakness is that we refuse to have a common denominator amongst all of our ideologies and realize that we are all 5%. We all know what time it is, and our first function, our first goal, our first mission should be toward obtaining power together, collectively, forming systems, forming institutions, forming organizations, forming things that you can have a new batch of youngsters come in at a preschool level and know about Sheikh Anta Diop, know about John Henry Clark, know about Chancellor Williams, know about Ivan Van Sertima, know about African history, know about the history of where they came from, know about the black man being God, know about all of these things at a preschool level, grade level, college level, university level, so that we can get a batch of children that can come out without all of this baggage and bullshit and propaganda that we have to fight against. Because all the people that are conscious, we had to go out and basically learn this stuff on our own. You know, we didn't come up through any educational system. We had to go out through the just our desire to want to know who we are. And we did it to a certain degree, but we also retained a lot of the niggerdom from the niggas and bitches.
Yeah.
We also retained a lot from the Boule. So ultimately, who's going to win? I tend to look at it a different way. Who's going to design the system that is going to enable us to win? And the answer is the brothers and the sisters. So the question is, why aren't we designing those systems?